Hello, hello. This is going to be another episode of Motivational Monday Live with your host, Aura Elena Martinez. And this week's episode is entitled, When You Lose Motivation. I'm going to be talking about motivation again here. Now, before I get started with this week's topic, I want to start off by introducing myself. If this is the first time that you are watching this episode or this series, better yet to say, because obviously it's going to be the first time you're watching this episode because this is another episode. And I'm also going to be sharing with you what is it that inspired me to create this series, Motivational Monday Live. Once again, my name is Aura Elena Martinez, and I'm a self-discovery and empowerment coach, helping women gain total clarity in their purpose so that they can wake up to daily fulfillment and certainty. Now, purpose is not to be limited to a calling. And the reason for that is because you could be living your calling and still not be living your most purposeful life. And that's because in order for you to enjoy greater levels of well-being and for you to be living your most purposeful life, it's so important that you enjoy great mental health, emotional health, physical health, spiritual health, and why not even financial health. That's right, because every part of you and your life matters. Everything in your life is connected. Everything is connected. Thank you for the likes. And what got me started with this series is the fact that Mondays tend to be that day of the week that many feel like, oh my God, it's the start of another week. And here I am, same thing every day. Oh, gotta go to work and da 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 da. Let me tell you this. If you're already feeling the anxiety of the week, if you're already feeling frustrated, you're not looking forward to going to work, you're not looking forward to your week ahead, let that be your sign. Let that be your sign that something drastically needs to change. Because you are not meant to be dreading your week, dreading going to work, dreading this, dreading that. That's not how you're meant to be living. That's not how you're meant to be living. And it is also my intention with this series that you get more and more connected to your truth. Your truth. Because the more you know and understand your truth, the more you're able to live authentically, right? Not according to what so and so says or what culture says or what family member says or whatever. No, according to how you want to live. And also, it is my intention with this series that every time you're watching this series, your level of consciousness keeps rising and rising and rising. You're going to hear me say this every single week, and there's a reason for that. The more you raise your level of consciousness, the more you're able to see you and your life differently. The more you're able to see life in general very differently. The things that once were very small, you start realizing its importance. The things that one time had so much importance, you start realizing it doesn't really matter. You don't need to wait till you get old or older to be raising your level of consciousness. Doesn't matter how old you are. Work on always raising your level of consciousness. When you're on the first floor looking outside, everything starts looking big. The cars look big, people look big, buildings look big. But as you raise to the 10th floor, everything starts shifting for you. You start getting a different perspective of things, right? The cars look smaller, people look miniature. The buildings don't look as tall as they once looked when you were on the first floor. Same thing when you're raising your level of consciousness. The reason why also this is very important is because there are times that the reason why certain things don't land for us, the reason why we're not able to see what's right in front of us is because we're not at the level of consciousness to really get it, to really see it, for things to land. And I also speak from personal experience. There were things before that I would hear and it just did not land. I was not at the level of consciousness for that to land for me. And as I started increasing my level of consciousness, it's like, oh, wow, that's profound. That is so profound. Now I get the deepness, the depth of that message. But why? Because my level of consciousness is very different. So I'm able to get the depth of that. So you see where I'm going with this. This is very, very important. This is very, very important. I'm telling you, the more you raise your level of consciousness, the more your life is going to change. It just is. Trust, it just is. Once again, the topic for this week's episode is entitled, When You Lose Motivation. And I want to talk about this because who doesn't lose motivation? Everyone. And the people that you see that they're very successful, they're not always motivated. Now, in today's episode, you're going to understand what actually fuels motivation. And what are the two types of motivations that you're going to need in order for you to make things happen for you in your life? Now, me personally, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't rely on motivation. I don't rely on motivation. If I were to rely on motivation, I wouldn't do half of the things that I do. Because the truth is, I'm not always motivated to do the things that I know I must do. That's the truth, right? Motivation is one of those things that it just fluctuates. It just fluctuates because let's be real, we're human beings. And so as human beings, we're going to feel all sorts of emotions, right? As human beings, things are going to happen throughout the day. Our mood is going to shift. So with our mood shifting and us experiencing all kinds of emotions, our motivation levels are going to shift too. This is why I highly recommend that you do not rely on motivation. And I'm going to tell you this. What fuels motivation is action. What fuels motivation is action. And the irony is that many times we wait for motivation to take action. And I'm going to tell you this too. If you wait for motivation in order for you to take action, you're actually positioning yourself for failure. You're positioning yourself for failure. Okay? You're setting yourself up for failure. The way that you get that engine going is by implementing one of the pieces of the engine that I described in the very first episode of this series. So if you haven't watched the first episode, go ahead and watch it, because then all this is going to start making sense. One of the things that you're going to have to start implementing is discipline. It's discipline. You have to discipline yourself. And one of the ways that you're going to get yourself to a place where you can acquire the discipline necessary is by making what you want a non-negotiable. You got to make it a non-negotiable. Because the truth is that you do not get what you want. No, wants are not enough. You get what you make a non-negotiable. That's the truth. Okay? You get what you're willing to work hard for. You get what you're willing to put your money in. You get what you put your energy in. That's what you get. And I'm also going to say this. Wanting is never the real question. We tend to ask so many times, okay, what do you want? What do you want? And okay, it's a valid question to get things started, right? To get the answer to whatever it is to start flowing. But that's not really the real question. It's never the real question. The real question is, what are you willing to do to get what it is that you say that you want? That's the real question. As a matter of fact, wanting is a problem. I bet you never heard that. I'm going to dare to say it. Wanting is a problem. And I'm going to tell you why wanting is a problem. Because wanting is so conditional. Wanting is so conditional. Because only when things are right are we going to do the things that we need to do in order to get that which we say that we want, right? Only when you have the time, the money, the whatever it is that you want to put in there is when you're going to do whatever it is that you say that you want to do. And it just doesn't work that way. And that's the reason why I say that wanting is never enough. Wanting is so conditional. Wanting is very weak. I can guarantee you that the people that have the things that you want, they're not wanting those things. They have those things because those things are non-negotiable for them. That business that is generating the money that they want to make, that's a non-negotiable for them. That body that they have, that's because it's a non-negotiable for them. So they're not waiting till they're motivated. They're not waiting until the time is right. They're not waiting until they have the money. They're not waiting until whatever you want to call it. They make it happen because it's a non-negotiable. When it's a want, it's only when it's convenient. It doesn't work that way. Now, if for whatever reason the thing that you say that you want isn't simply a want, but doing what it is that needs to be done is such a challenge for you, and your lack of actions makes it seem like it's a want, then there is something there that is a blind spot for you that is making it challenging for you to take action. And that you need to investigate. That you need to investigate. And I'm going to use myself as an example to describe what it is that I just said, right? So you could get where I'm going with this. So I've been in this entrepreneurial journey since 2013. So it's been a hot minute now. And it was so challenging at first for me to show up online. I mean, it was so challenging. The way I would show up online was through blogging. So I used to blog a lot. So I started out as a wellness and life coach, helping people get out of the sugar roller coaster. But it was so hard for me to show up online. It was so hard for me to let people know what I was doing. It was hard. My journey was a long one. It was a long one. And I didn't understand why it was so hard for me to show up online. And I would have people messaging me, asking me to do videos about the things that I was blogging about. And it was just, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. It was so hard for me to show up online. And my lack of actions at the time made it seem like this business of mine just wasn't a priority. I mean, I looked like it was just simply a dream, but it was not simply a dream. But at the time, I didn't understand what was going on and why showing up online and why making myself so visible was such a challenge for me. I didn't understand at the time what was happening. And it wasn't until I healed a wound that I didn't, it's like I knew I had, but I didn't know that I had. And I healed it back in 2020. So you see how long it took me for me to get that realization. That's the reason why I do the work that I do, because nothing needs to take so long. But to the degree that you are not seeing something that you need to see, the gap is always going to seem big. The gap is always going to seem big, right? And this wound that I had was a hatred that a hatred. It wasn't even a dislike. It was a hatred that I had towards a part of me. And I did not realize at the time to the degree that that was affecting my life. It was affecting my life. It was affecting the way I was interacting with men. You believe that? Yeah. I had low self-esteem. I felt less than. I did not feel good enough. I did not feel pretty enough. And FYI, that I didn't even realize then. The kind of men, the kind of guys that I allowed in my life just reflected that. So let everything that you choose be a reflection of what is going on in your inner world, because it always is. Whether we realize it or not, it always is. And so I did not realize the degree that this was affecting my life. And it was also affecting my business because it wasn't allowing me to show up online. And I did not want to show up online unless I looked a certain way. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? And if you look at videos of me prior to 2020, I looked stiff. I wasn't who I am today. And mind you, who I am today, I always was. But the wound was preventing me from shining my light. My wound was preventing me from being who I am at my core. Do you hear that? So when you notice that there is something that you're so desiring, it's not just a want, it's something that you truly desire, but for whatever reason, you taking action is so hard, and that it's hard for you to stay motivated, then it's time to dig deep. And I'm going to break down these steps because it's going to be very important to investigate what's really going on. Okay. The first thing that you're going to want to find out is Is this that you say that you want just simply a want, or is it a non-negotiable? It's going to be very important for you to figure out which of the two it is. If it is just simply a want, well, then there you go. You don't get what you want. You get what you make a non-negotiable. I want you to really get that. You get what you make a non-negotiable. Now, if you realize that this is a non-negotiable, right? If you realize that this is a non-negotiable, then, well, you're going to need to dig a little deeper. And I'm going to break this down even further so that you can see where I'm going with all this. Since this week's topic is about motivation, I'm going to go deep. All right. When something is a non-negotiable, you're going to need two types of motivation. Okay. And these are the internal motivation and the external motivation. And both of them play a big role. Both of them. You need a little bit of both, okay? So let's start with the internal motivation because this is going to be important. If you notice that something is a non-negotiable, but for some reason, it is hard for you to get yourself to do something, perhaps the problem is not a lack of motivation. There are several factors that affect your internal motivation. The first one is lack of self-esteem. Lack of self-esteem. When you lack self-esteem, you don't feel worthy of the things that you say that you want. You're not going to feel worthy. When you lack self-esteem, energetically, you're going to block your good. Because think about it, if you don't feel worthy of whatever it is that you want, and what you want is for your good, you're not going to realize it, but you're going to block it. You're going to block it either by not choosing something that is good for you, or rejecting it, or just your stance. Yeah, oh, that is so true. Yes, Suzanne. Yeah, you're going to block it. You're going to block it. Okay? And low self-esteem on a subconscious level has you choosing things or people or circumstances that only feeds that low self-esteem that you already have. This is why tackling this is so important. You cannot afford whatever it is that you want. You cannot afford to have this as one of the factors that keeps you away from experiencing the internal motivation necessary to keep you going. You cannot afford it. You cannot afford it. Low self-esteem prevents you from making high vibrational decisions. It just does. The way that low self-esteem affects your internal motivation is by the following. If you are making decisions based on whatever limiting belief that you may have, because by default, if you have low self-esteem, you have limiting beliefs about yourself and your life by default. By default. So if you're making choices based on that, on whatever limiting belief that you have, and you're taking action or doing things hoping that whatever you're doing changes your physical reality, and it doesn't, which it won't if you're making decisions based on limiting beliefs, by the way, that's going to discourage you. That's going to discourage you. And that's going to have you thinking, well, perhaps what I want is impossible, or I cannot do this. Thank you for the hearts. It's going to have you thinking all sorts of things. So if this is how you're thinking and feeling, you're going to lack motivation. You're going to lack the internal motivation necessary in order to keep you going. This is why these are some of those things that you have to really pay attention to. You have to pay attention to. The second factor that influences your internal motivation is lack of self-confidence. Lack of self-confidence. Now, this is different from lack of self-esteem, okay? Although they can sometimes go hand in hand. Sometimes they can go hand in hand, but both of them are different. And I'm going to explain to you why. And I'm going to use the following example just to illustrate the difference, to explain what it is that I said. Let me just say that, to explain what it is that I just said, that they don't necessarily have to go hand in hand. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. If you have low self-esteem, you will have lack of self-confidence. You just will. And I think it's understandable why. You're going to have low self-confidence. However, if you have a healthy self-esteem, you can still have lack of self-confidence in an area or in something. I'm going to explain to you what I mean. I'm going to break this down further by utilizing an example so that you can get what it is that I mean with this. Now, I'm going to utilize myself as an example. So I have a much healthier self-esteem in comparison to before, obviously. When it comes to administrative work, though, I lack self-confidence. Forget that. I don't like it. It bores me. I'm talking about administrative work. It bores me. It doesn't excite me. Me paying attention to every little detail. And that's a job that requires you to pay attention to all those minor details, right? I don't like it. I don't like it. I can't do it. I just can't do it, right? So I lack confidence in administrative work. Does it mean that I have low self-esteem? No, those are two different things. And I just utilize that as an example so that you can get that having low or lack of self-confidence doesn't mean necessarily that you have low self-esteem. However, if you do have low self-esteem, you will lack self-confidence, right? You just will lack it. And in that sense, they go hand in hand. But one doesn't need to mean the other, okay? And the difference between the two is that self-esteem has to do with how you feel about yourself, whereas self-confidence is the trust in your own ability to do something or in some quality or something of that sort. That's what it is. So you can still have high self-esteem and lack confidence in something. That's what I'm trying to get to, okay? These are two different things. How lack of self-confidence affects your internal motivation is that when you lack self-confidence, you won't put much effort into whatever it is that you must do. You're just not. You're just not. And the reason for that is because you're going to have a cloud over you. There's like a cloud over you. The cloud of, I don't have what it takes. The cloud of, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this, whatever, right? So that cloud is going to prevent you from taking action. And lack of action leads or creates stagnation of all sorts, including motivation. Including motivation. The third factor that influences your internal motivation is lack of self-trust. I'm going to make this third factor very short, and that's because by default, if you lack self-trust, you lack self-confidence. These two go hand in hand. These two go hand in hand because self-confidence is trust in yourself, trust in your ability to do something or be something. That's what self-confidence is, right? That's what self-confidence is. And I think by now you get how lack of self-trust affects your internal motivation, right? Just like lack of self-confidence, if you lack self-trust, you have this cloud over you that will prevent you from taking action. It just will, right? I want you to remember this. Action stimulates motivation. Action stimulates motivation. So your lack of action only feeds the lack of motivation, keeping you in a cycle that seems impossible to break. And the only way to break it is by taking action, because action stimulates motivation. I want you to always remember that. Whenever you're not motivated, take action. That is going to stimulate your motivation, okay? A fourth factor that also affects your internal motivation is your memory. Your memory, right? What do I mean with this? I'm going to use this as an example to illustrate how memory influences your internal motivation. If you tried something so many times in the past and nothing has worked, if you're not mindful, you can condition yourself into thinking, well, what's the use? What's the use of me doing this? I mean, nothing that I do works, right? So why continue? Why do it? So you can understand how this affects your ability to take action, obviously, because if that's how you're thinking, you're not going to want to take action. And this is why it is so important that you are mindful of your memory, how you use your memory. So important. So important. So these are just some of the things that affect your internal motivation. And internal motivation isn't something necessarily that someone else can give you. It's something that comes from within, right? You need that. You need that internal motivation. That is very, very necessary. Now let's look at the external motivation because we also need that too. We need a little bit of both, okay? One factor that influences your external motivation is the people that you surround yourself by. There, I said it. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Your social life, who you surround yourself by, matters. Matters. And I'm going to say this, the bigger the goal, the more you have to surround yourself by those that are in the same journey as you. Now, I want to clarify. I'm not saying that you forget the other people that you have in your life that are not in the same path as you. That is not what I'm saying. However, it is a must that you spend more time with these people that are in the same journey or path or that have the same goals as you. And here is why. You're going to get why. The bigger the goal, the bigger the stretch. The bigger the stretch, right? And in that stretch, you're going to be tempted to go back to your old ways. You just are. You just are. And someone that isn't in the same path as you, they're not going to know how to advise you. They're just not. They're not going to have the right words. They're not going to know what to say. They're just not. And so they don't mean to, but they just don't have the ability to move you past that stretch. Okay? Those moments of stretch are critical because this is where you can find yourself in a crossroad in your life. And crossroads are those moments where, those moments where you feel like you have a foot in the side of the life that you desire, and then another foot in your everyday, normal, or old life. And it just can go either way. You either going to put that other foot and go all in the life that you want, or you could put that foot right back in the life that you've been living all these years. And that's very important. Those are critical moments. Those are very critical moments. Let me just tell you that much. Okay. And that's when you're going to need those people that you see that they're going for it. They're living it. You need those people. The bigger the goal, the more you need to spend time with them. Okay. Another reason why it's important to surround yourself by those that are in the same path as you or that have the same goals as you is because seeing them make it a reality, it fills you up with possibility. It lets you see that it is also possible for you. That if they can do it, you can do it too. I'm sorry, we all need role models. Nobody is an island on their own. Nobody succeeds on their own. I don't care if they say they're self-made. Nobody is self-made. I mean, they burst that bubble right now. Nobody is self-made. We all need other people. And we certainly need role models around us and in our personal space. We need role models, okay? We need it. And also, you seeing them make it happen, it fuels you. It motivates you to keep going, even when the going gets tough. You feed off of each other's energy. This is why it's so important. This is why it's so important. This is why I don't get intimidated if I see someone succeeding, because they're just showing to me that it is possible. They're just modeling to me that it is possible, right? The survival of your dreams, of your desires, of your vision depends on all this. It depends on all this. It just does. And that's because we are stimulated by what we see around us. We just are. And this takes me to the second factor that influences your external motivation, and that is your physical environment. Now, by physical, this has nothing to do with people. This has absolutely nothing to do with people. I literally mean your physical environment, right? And I kind of got a glimpse of how important the physical environment is back when I had my place in Atlanta, but it became more visible or more evident for me the moment I started going to the in-person events of one of my mentors, Gina DeVee. She really elevated the standard for my life on so many levels. So she would have these events in the most gorgeous places, and the hotels that she would choose. I mean, these were 5 stars hotels, beautiful places, so high vibe. It was just the whole package. And I gotta admit, being in those places, it stimulated me. It stimulated me to go for more, to be more, to do more, to act more, to believe in more, to know that more is possible. But it was like the whole environment. And I'm telling you, she was the one that elevated my standard, the way I show up, the way I present myself, how I feel about myself, how I see myself. And so the reason why I share that example with you is because your environment, thank you for the like, your environment can stimulate you to go for more, or it can have you feeling flat. Your environment matters. Your environment has an energy to it. Everything is energy. So consider the physical environment you're in, because it does play a role in your levels of motivation. It does. It does. And these are some of the things that we tend to overlook. These are some of the things that sometimes we take for granted, but we shouldn't, because they matter. They matter. And one thing that I didn't mention in the Spanish version, I don't know who here needs to hear this, that it just comes to me to say it in English. But one of those things when it comes to physical environment that I didn't even think to consider, but it just came to me. And again, I don't know who needs to hear this. Consider how you look. How are you putting yourself together? Because, like I said, everything is energy. When you self abandon, even physically, there's an energy to that. There's an energy to that. It doesn't mean you have to be all glamour or anything, but the more you take care of yourself and the more you dress in a way that lifts you up, that's going to up your levels of motivation as well. That's going to up your levels of motivation. And that's part of the external motivation that is necessary in order to keep your engines going, to keep moving forward. You start implementing all of this and you're going to start seeing changes. And let me tell you this, if you notice, let this episode be the message that really opens you up and has you saying, okay, where am I lacking motivation? And what could be one of the contributing factors that don't allow me to feel motivated? I'm telling you, if you have low self-esteem, lack of self-confidence, lack of self-trust, if you have any of those things going on, I'm telling you, it's going to prevent you from taking action. It just is point blank. There's no way you're going to be able to live your most purposeful life. There's just no way. There's just no way. So if you find yourself in this position where you are lacking in any of those things, where you notice that it is challenging for you to find the motivation within or even outside of you, for you to take the steps that you need to take in order for you to step into the life that you desire, then I'm going to highly recommend that you schedule your clarity call with me. I'm always posting those links, or you can message me. Because in that call, we're going to find out where you are now, where you would like to be, what is necessary to close that gap, and how I'm able to help you. You don't need to be confused. You don't need to be going in circles. You don't need to be in a cycle that you do not like. It's time to change all that. It's time for you to have the self-confidence, the self-esteem, the self-trust, the motivation necessary. Bring to light whatever blind spot that is getting in the way. It's time. It's time. So schedule your clarity call with me and share this message, share this video with other people. You never know who in your personal space right now is lacking some sort of motivation, and this can be the message that lights their light bulb within them, has them thinking, has them saying, oh my God, this is the very thing that I need to change in my life, and I had no idea. This could be the video that can help them do that. So share this with those that you know. And it is my desire that you allow this message to sink in, that you allow this message, this week's episode to be the episode that has you thinking, okay, what area of my life am I lacking motivation? And why is it? That has you thinking, that stimulates that answer that you need. And with that said, it is my desire that you live life to the max the way you are destined to live. Don't forget to share this video. And until next time, bye for now.